Hello everyone, and welcome to Biopedia. As well as being Independence Day in the United States of America, the 4th of July now has new climatological significance. This is because July 4th, 2023 is now the day when the Earth experienced its hottest temperatures since records began. As reported in the Smithsonian Magazine's website, this record was broken in consecutive days on July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The 2nd of July was the hottest day ever, until the very next day, and so on. On the 3rd of July, the world's global mean temperature was 17.07 degrees Celsius. Over the next few days, this rose to 17.18 degrees. A fact I often saw thrown around the internet, for example on CNN and a website by the name of Truth Out, was that this was the hottest day for 125,000 years. These articles noted that the fact had come from scientific opinion, but didn't say which scientists. In the case of Truth Out, the Washington Post was cited, but neither website specified the source. However, I found this claim sourced more definitively on the Smithsonian's website. Apparently, the quote comes from an interview Leo Sands from the Washington Post had with Paolo Ceppi, a climate researcher at Imperial College London. So, the number does appear to have some scientific opinion behind it rather than being just a number with no original source. Now, let me put that number into perspective. After all, 125,000 years ago sounds big, but is kind of abstract. Well, at that point, Neanderthals would still have been around. Numbers from the 1990s list the period of 30 to 40,000 years ago as when Neanderthals went extinct. However, they cite caution is needed as this period is in the upper limit of what radiocarbon dating is capable of measuring. Similarly, it was noted in 2015 that estimates are being revised for when the transition to a world without Neanderthals took place. A commentary article noted that research was showing Croatian samples of the transition were being dated as older than 40,000 years rather than in the range of 35 to 40,000 years. The Smithsonian's Museum of Natural History gives dates for Neanderthals' existence as between 400 and 40,000 years ago. However, I've seen papers state that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens diverged either before 800,000 years ago or in a range of 315 to 538,000 years ago. Regardless of numbers, the main point is Neanderthals were still around when this heat record was last reached 125,000 years ago. Similarly, mitochondrial Eve wasn't that far away, as she lived about 170,000 years ago according to a figure published in the New Scientist in 2007. This same article lists Y-Chromosomal Adam as not having been born yet at this point, as he was around 100,000 years ago. Humans wouldn't have travelled out of Africa yet either. This only takes place between 50 and 70,000 years ago. I haven't read this next paper fully, but from what I've skimmed, humans may only have been around 14,000 strong in terms of population at this point. However, I should say that I haven't delved into it any further, as this is not an episode on the out of Africa hypotheses. 125,000 years ago, the last glacial maximum was yet to occur, as it lasted from 115 to 11,000 years ago. Finally, if you want a historical perspective, Egypt's king Aha, from its first dynasty, is estimated to have ascended sometime in the time window between 3218 and 3035 BCE, according to a 95% confidence interval. That's about 5,000 years ago, so the blink of an eye compared to this timeline. Put another way, ancient Egypt began about 6,000 years after the last ice age ended, whereas our heat record focuses on the period 10,000 years before it even began. As I pointed out in an article for the Exeter University campus newspaper Expose a few years ago, but for which I unfortunately don't have the sources anymore, the issue with global warming is not how much is happening, but how fast. Compared to periods such as the warming in the Eocene, anthropogenic warming is tens of thousands of times quicker. If people are interested, I can come back to the maths for this in a separate episode when I've rediscovered the source documents I used originally. All of that said, this leaves the question. We may be talking about heat records now, but how warm was the Earth in the deep past, so millions of years ago? During the Mesozoic and Paleogene, so the periods between about 252 and about 23 million years ago, the Earth had atmospheric carbon dioxide levels of about 500 to 1700 parts per million. During the so-called Weissert event, which took place about 133 million years ago, Earth lost about 40% of its CO2 in about 700,000 years. A 2021 paper suggests that the sea surface temperature during the Cretaceous was at a minimum of about 20 degrees and a maximum of around 29 or 29.5 degrees, depending on how you interpret the maximum and minimum estimates they show in their graph. This again highlights the problem isn't warming in the deep past, but the rates at which it's happening today. In any case, this heat record can show the impact of anthropogenic climate change. With that, we've reached the end of today's tale. Thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions for the future, you can reach me at the show's email address. Until next time, have a great week, everyone.